Good morning, UW Tacoma. My name is Joe Lawless, and I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at UW Tacoma. And I'd like to welcome you to the October Chancellor's Town Hall. Thank you for participating virtually through YouTube. We're using this format to ensure that the most people possible can participate during these times when we have to be physically apart. We are so much looking forward to the day when we can gather again in person in Phillip Hall. And since this is an earlier town hall, I send you virtual coffee to get going this morning. So I'd like to begin with a land acknowledgement. We recognize that all of us at UW Tacoma learn, live, and work on or near the ancestral homeland of the Coast Salish people. In particular, we are situated on the traditional territory of the Puyallup. As people on this occupied territory, we have a responsibility to acknowledge the land, the ancestors who have cared for the land since time immemorial, and all our Indigenous connections today. We also have the responsibility to acknowledge the histories of dispossession and forced removal that have allowed for the growth and survival of this institution. In light of this history, let us take active efforts to partner with our Indigenous community members and neighbors as we continue our work together as a community of learners, leaders, and educators. Thank you. So the way this is going to work is that if you have questions you'd like to address, please email them at any time to uwttownhall@uw.edu. I've gotten a few questions before we began that we'll kick things off with. But if during this you have questions, please email them to me and I will work them in. And even if you're watching this later and have questions, email them to that email and I will do my best to get answers to your questions back to you. We have two people with us on the call today. And they are Chancellor Pagano and our Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, Mentha Hines Wilson. Mark, would you like to kick things off?
Yes, thank you, Joe. And let me add my own welcome to everybody. Hello and welcome again to fall 2020. Boy, how time flies when you're on Zoom 8 or 9 hours a day. I can't believe we're already a third of the way through the quarter, and it's actually going to be November next week. So things really move fast, even in the pandemic. And I'm glad Joe mentioned coffee because I'm down on campus today. I was on campus yesterday as well. Metro Coffee is back open. So if you are on campus, I encourage you to go by Metro. I'm sure they would appreciate the business. They have a walk-up window. You can order from outside and buy yourself and anybody that you can see around you some coffee. So that would be great. So what's new at UW Tacoma? Absolutely nothing. Just kidding. There's a lot new. There seems like new developments all the time. And I want to get to these today, but we're going to manage our time so that we do allow time at the end for questions because we gave you a little too much information last town hall. But before we get to that, I do need to tell you again, be sure to go out and vote. If you're a longtime resident, I'm sure you've gotten your ballot in the mail. We got our ballots in the mail. I worked on mine the past couple of days, and I loved it yesterday. I actually walked down from my office down the grand staircase, and there's a ballot box right here on our campus. So I've never been able to do that in my life. Where I work, actually walk out the door and put my ballot in the ballot box. So that's fantastic. So this is a urban serving campus full of social justice, civic mindedness. So it is not only your privilege, it's your responsibility to go vote. So make sure you do that. So first piece of news, really, really good news. The highest enrollment ever at UW Tacoma this fall. We had 5,380 students, which is 5 more than we've ever had. So let's hear it for UW Tacoma. And the only issue is we have to serve these 5,380 students, but I have full confidence in the folks that I'm talking to serve these students well. So while this is really great news, we were going to talk about budget in a minute. We were budgeting for a flat enrollment. We were actually a little ahead of last year, but we can't get too excited because our tuition collections are still a little bit behind because just headcount is not a solid measure of the tuition collections, because it depends on what kind of students, how many hours they're taking, so on and so forth. So we're doing really well, but we are not out of the woods yet, so to speak. Also, while we're talking about tuition revenue, let me take a few moments to give you an update on our budget situation. Now, not a whole lot of new information has happened, but we are in a major financial crisis as a country, as a state, as higher ed. So people have a lot of questions about this. So I would like to cover a little bit of that about this. So we are experiencing losses, but we need to put it in perspective. Our losses are manageable right now. So we are not collecting very many parking fees. We're not collecting all of the rent for the businesses. We're starting to collect more rent, but we waived essentially all of the rent for 3 months. Our activities in the conference services unit, our professional development center are not as robust as they were, as you might expect before the campus. And we are spending money we didn't used to spend on PPE, cleaning supplies, and things like that. So yes, we do have losses, and we track those carefully. And from the time the pandemic started in March, projected to December 31st of this year, we're estimating those losses to be $2.6 million. That's a lot for UW-Tacoma, but it's not near the catastrophe that some of our cities and states and our country is under, and some of the businesses that are full. So our losses are significant, but they're manageable. Along with that, we actually carried forward $4.6 million last year. And what I mean by that, we had a budget for last year, a set of expected expenditures, and we went through the whole year without spending $4.6 million of that money. And a lot of that was because we couldn't travel. We couldn't go to conferences, so we didn't have those conferences fees and things like that. It took a while for the outside world to get to where they could do conferences online and things like that. So we were able to carry forward that money and essentially cover those losses of $2.6 million. We also allowed the units to carry forward some of that money in addition to their budgets for this year to do some strategic projects that they had in line to do in their areas. The bad news about that is after we carry forward that money to the units so they could do some projects and essentially covered our losses, we're not really putting any additional money in the bank, so to speak, in our reserve. But we are holding our own, and we're in pretty good shape. Now I want to talk a little bit about our overall budget for this year and what's going on with that. And I have a couple slides to show you. So I believe this slide has popped up. This slide is a representation of where we get our money from. It's labeled UW-Tacoma income distribution. You see the big slice of the pie, the 53.7 million. That's the major source of income. That's the tuition. And then we get this next major slice from the state. That's our state allocation, which is 25.4 million, about 30% of our overall income that we use to manage the campus. We also have research funds that pay some of our faculty salaries and some of our staff salaries. The overheads of those do contribute to paying some of the expenses at the Center for Urban Waters. Those up and down a little bit, but they're typically around $4 to $5 million. And we also take some of the income from our auxiliary enterprises and put that into the pot too. And that's about 1%. So here you see that our overall budget for campus is around $85 million, and 30% of that comes from the state. So as we went into the pandemic and the economic crisis, you all know what happened. We had a lockdown, stay-at-home order. People weren't going out to eat. They weren't going to the bowling alley. A lot of things weren't happening. So tax income for the state was decreasing. So the state was leaking tax income, and they projected back in May or June that was going to amount to $9.8 billion over the second year of this biennium. That's the budget we just started this year right now, and the next biennium, which is 2 more years. So in the next 3 years, the state was projecting it was going to have a shortfall of $9.8 million. Well, that's significant. So what they did is told all of the agencies, including higher ed, because we get our $25.4 million from them, that they were expecting this shortfall so that we could expect our share less in the coming biennial budget process. And that part, let's go to the next slide, would be 15% of our state allocation. So can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, yeah, we're there. No, I'm sorry. Go back one. Yeah, this slide here. I'm looking at one set of slides and Mark is moving another set of slides. Sorry about that. So if you look at these slides, you see what the state asked for in June. They sent a letter to all the state agencies and said, please model a 15% reduction in what we give to you. And this went to UW as a whole. So the University of Washington has asked all three campuses to model how we would cover that 15% reduction, which is $3.8 million for our campus. Well, we got this letter in June when a lot of people weren't here, so we couldn't really start the process into the faculty and the staff. Everybody was back this fall, so we started that process now. But in the meantime, in August, to protect the university's investment, the UW asked if we would actually give a third of that back now. So they actually wanted 1/3 of that $3.8 million. Specifically, they asked us for 1.18, which I've estimated to be 1.2 on this slide for simplicity. They asked us to actually give that back. So we already had an approved budget back in June, and we talked about that over the town hall in the summer. We had an approved budget, but now we've been asked to give 1.2 back, which we did. But luckily, if you think through what we've done the last couple of years, 2 years ago, we went through a reduction exercise and a reallocation in the administrative units, and we removed about $2 million worth of expenditures from those units, and then fed about half of that back into the academic enterprise and the administrative enterprises. So we realized a whole $1 million worth of savings to stretch our margin out so we have a little wiggle room. And then last year we did the same thing, but in a smaller percent with the academic units. So we had built back in $1 million worth of margin so that we're not spending every penny of this income we are collecting each year from these sources. So we just had finished that, and we had actually gone a little deeper and had several $100,000 to also reinvest in addition to the $1 million of margin. And we were just starting to spend that. We financed our second online learning specialist. We funded the Equity and Inclusion Center, several things, and then we got the letter from the state, so we stopped spending that money. So we had a little pool there, our $1 million margin. So luckily, we were able to send the 1.2 back to Seattle with no effect on any of the units on campus. So that's the good news. No effect on any units. We had about exactly that 1.2 sitting there to give back. The bad news is we have no wiggle room whatsoever over the rest of the year to do much new things in continuing funds. Next slide, please. So I wanted you to see this because we are starting to work on that modeling process. And please keep in mind, it's a modeling process. We're actually not cutting budgets right now. We won't do that until next July if we're asked to, but we have to model how we would reduce that other $2.6 million. So I wanted to show you, and these are available on our website. If you go to the planning and budgeting website, you can see these slides. They're pretty small on the screen, but what you're looking at right there, the red area is how we've invested in instruction over the past 4 years. And you can see that we've made significant investments in instruction over the last 4 years. It did go down a little bit this budget year. So this brighter red one, that represents this year because we did that $1 million or $805,000, I think, reduction exercise in the academic units. You see, though, that a lot of folks think that we're having a glut in administration, but we've actually reduced that over time. We've brought that spending in check. Look at this wonderful job in the gold area that our facilities team, Stanley Joshua and the facilities team, have really worked hard to keep our expenditures in line. Even those things are going up, they're working very hard to make sustainable practices and reduce those expenditures. Student affairs, we have Menta on the screen there. They've done an excellent job in keeping their expenditures in check. They've essentially been flat over the last 4 years with the same level of service to our students. So we're really proud of that. As are these other areas. You see the primary support, academic support, library. We made a little tick up this year, which is very much needed. But then that purple area, you can see what is happening there. The purple area is our unallocated funds, our margin. Look at what that is right now. I said we're right, at even. Jan and her team predict that's 114,000, which isn't very much in an $85 million budget. So we're right at even. So anyway, that's one way to look at it. Next slide just shows another way to look at it. I'm not going to go into detail, but this slide essentially shows you what portion are going to faculty salaries, what portion is going to benefits, and that's for both faculty and staff, what portion is going to professional salaries, operations on campus, we already talked about that, hourly folks, clerical folks. So this information is available to the campus community as in your units you think through how you want to do your reductions. So I wanted to make you aware of all that. And one last thing, if you switch to the last two slides, the University of Washington has provided us with a set of guiding principles that we will use as we model our reductions. And you can see that these are the same principles we would use if we hadn't been furnished these principles. I think we would have come up with something very similar. Serving students is our first priority. Preserving the quality of the UW Husky experience. Responding through everything with the equity lens. This is what we do at UW-Tacoma. So we have no issue whatsoever. These are great reduction principles, and we'll use these. Next slide, please. There's also a few that relate to not passing on these expenses to your neighbor. You might cut something that we can't actually cut. It's a mission critical thing, and then your neighbor, being maybe student affairs or administrative services, have cut. So anyway, we have some principles, and we're off and running. We're trying to do a very collaborative process with the faculty executive council, the staff council, the student government. All of us are working on this together. Now, along with this same area, I wanted to let you know that we did have turnover in the Vice Chancellor for Finance Administration, who a lot of this budget material is under. That happened in June, so we've been without that position for a while. A lot of folks on campus had different ideas of how we should approach that position moving forward. So I stopped and took a pause, and we hired a consultant that came in over the summer and interviewed all of the administrative team, the deans, the program administrators. They did focus groups with all the people in finance administration. They visited with the provost, the president, and the people that this position interfaced with in Seattle. And they collected this information and gave us a report with some recommendations on how we might think about moving forward. We just have received this report, so we're being very deliberate, and I don't want to say slow, but we're being deliberate and going to move forward cautiously as we decide what we want that position to be in the future. And I'll make that report available. It might already be available on my website. Also, you saw the note from me where we have received our report from UW Internal Audit. That was about the process last year when we related to that situation where we had a large number of courses that were canceled kind of at the last minute in SIAS last fall. So several of us asked Internal Audit to come look at that. That report is available, and it's on my website as well. And it had a slate of recommendations in it as well. So one of the things that I said to campus is we don't want this ever to happen again. Right now, we're driving the ship without a Vice Chancellor for Finance Administration. We have excellent people over in finance. We have Jan Rutledge and Michael Russell. They are doing an outstanding job. They're increasing the transparency, pushing out information to all of us. They're doing a great job, but there's still a lot of things that Ty Minkler used to do as Vice Chancellor, a lot of new things that we need to do because of these recommendations, a lot of extra work on the side that we need to do because of the budget reduction process and looking through, analyzing all that. So we've decided to bring in a part-time temporary person for about 6 months as we finish our search for our Vice Chancellor. And you'll hear more about that soon. We're working on that as we speak. So one last topic before I turn it over to Joe and Mintha is a lot of people have asked about my administrative review. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about that, but I also want to remind you that was the president and provost review of my position. So I believe they'll come to campus and give you an opportunity to ask questions to them. But it was a large undertaking. It's essentially done now. and it actually started on March 6th. You all remember what March 6th was. That was the day that we announced that we would go fully remote on March 9th. Now, I asked for this review essentially a year early. When I came, I thought they would review me in my 5th year so I could decide as I got to my 5th year what I wanted to do when I grow up. However, what the UW usually does is let you go through, if everything's going well, they let you go through your 5th year. And then during your 6th year, they will do a review. Well, I turned 65 over the summer, and I knew that. I knew I was going to turn 65 last fall. So I asked for my review early. So you got to be careful what you ask for. I asked for that, and then COVID hit. That last Friday before we went completely remote, I was in the room with my review committee. The same thing happened to them. So we all had to do this process remotely, but it was very rigorous. I think it was productive for me. I know it was productive for me. It was productive for the president and provost, and I firmly believe it's going to be productive for the campus as well. So some of the good things that we learned were the campaign. People were very pleased about us finishing our campaign. We actually extended it by $10 million and to $55 million, and we actually finished right about 56. People were excited that we got all 7 academic departments in the school. People are impressed and pleased that we've added almost a dozen new academic programs over the 5 years. People are proud that we applied for and got Carnegie classification. Along with that, they like the support of the Office of Community Partnerships. They like the fact that we're continuing to build deep relationships and adding very productive relationships with our community, whether it's JBLM, Tacoma Public Schools, with the 2-year colleges, the mayor's office, whoever. People appreciate the way that we work with our community. People were fairly pleased with the increases we've had in research productivity, that we had a balanced budget, and we've grown the enrollment by almost 1,000 students. And the one biggie that made the biggest impact for me, the thing I'm most proud of, is the charting our core strategic plan that solidified our urban serving mission, and we're now starting our last year of that plan. So those were all the positive things. The things that there were concerns about were, of course, the budget, transparency, turnover of key leadership positions, such as the executive vice chancellor, chancellor for academic affairs, the vice chancellor for finance and administration, progress on diversifying our faculty and staff. It's been in some areas, but not across the whole campus. And there were also a couple concerns about the UW as well. The articulation between our campus and the main or the flagship campus. We're still more like a school than we are a campus. So those are all issues that can be addressed. So the bottom line is you get to celebrate for like 5 minutes, and then you got to get to work on all the concerns. So that's what we're doing now. And you'll hear a little bit more about that when I talk again. But right now I want to hand it to Mintha and Joe, and they're going to talk about operations of campus. And I believe Mintha Hines-Wilson, our Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, is going to go first. Mintha.
All right. So thank you, Mark. I want to acknowledge that we appreciate all that you've done for this university and for the community. We're really appreciative of your steady and strategic leadership, and we're looking forward to working with you over the course of the next few months. And we're also looking forward to engaging the campus community so we can have a very smooth transition as we position ourselves for the next decade of service, leadership, and accomplishment for UW Tacoma. So hello, campus community. We are ending the 3rd week of the quarter, and so many of you have worked with us to get us here. So I want to recognize and applaud all faculty, staff, student assistants, alumni, and friends. We are a blended community right now. Roughly 90% of our autumn courses are being taught in a virtual environment, and 10% are being taught here on the campus. And so far, we are off to a very, very good start. We've asked a lot of everyone, and I am grateful for your compliance. By completing the daily attestation, keeping at a distance from each other, wearing a face covering over the mouth and the nose in both public and shared spaces, and keeping our hands clean, we reduce the spread of the coronavirus. And I thank you, thank you, thank you for your commitment. This morning, there are 3 items of interest that I want to share with you. The first is how to support a student who tests positive for COVID. Second, opportunities for students to get involved and meet new people. And then finally, the schedule for on-campus COVID testing. So let's jump right on in and talk about how to support students and individuals who report that they're tested. So the campus learns of a COVID notification in multiple ways, principally through self-reporting or a public health notification from Environmental Health Services and the Husky Corona testing program. In all instances, we want to make clear that we care about our community member. We're concerned about their overall well-being, and we underscore the necessity for the individual to stay home, avoid public spaces, and follow the guidance of a healthcare professional. Students, if you think you've been exposed, you can disclose privately this information to Dr. Bernard Anderson. Dr. Bernard serves in Student Affairs as the Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Life. He will talk with you about the next steps, make a referral to a UW nurse, and arrange for follow-up as needed. So students, if you are positive or you believe you are demonstrating symptoms, reach out to Dr. Bernard and he will guide you through the process. Faculty and staff, we know that you're hearing from students too about positive instances or individuals who are feeling sick. So the same practice applies. Demonstrate care, let the student know that you will make a confidential referral to Dr. Bernard Anderson. Bernard will talk with the student and with you about next steps, make the referral to the nurse, and arrange for follow-up. This information has been made available on various websites. There have also been a series of communications outlining this information, but I wanted to take a moment just simply and quickly highlight the steps for notification. And as of today, on the campus, we are aware of 0 instances of faculty positive cases, 3 staff have tested positive, and 13 students. This is between the window of February and October. All have received care, all are either recovered or recovering. So again, we invite anyone that is tested positive to please self-disclose, and I've identified for you the ways in which you can do so, and it's available on the website as well. Now, another topic that has come up in recent days is, how are students doing? You know, there's so few of them on the campus. Are they engaged? Are they okay? What is happening from their perspective? So as the Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs, I share broad responsibility for students' well-being and their education outside of the classroom. So I'm fortunate to have a solid student affairs team, and the folks in enrollment services, student life, student transitions, and success are working to ensure that all students are welcomed, made aware of campus resources, and feel a sense of community. So our teams know from conversations on live chat and Zoom that students are doing okay. Some feel anxious and are struggling with motivation due to high stress levels. Our students are also reporting the interaction that takes place in their non-academic lives, like seeing friends and eating together and attending sporting events, being in community. They're missing all of that. And so we're working to be as responsive as we can in the virtual space. Several departments across the campus are keeping students engaged. The CEI, as one example, hosted a series of welcome receptions and a lecture last night. The Office of Global Affairs held a mini study abroad fair. The CSI launched a voter registration drive and made available nonpartisan voting materials. We're also seeing a lot of activity over in the Y, both in person and in virtual offerings, and students who are residing in Court 17 are engaging in light programming. A new program that I want to call your attention to is entitled Dog Bones. So Dog Bones is designed to encourage and reward student involvement. Students enrolled in the program earn points by attending campus events, joining clubs and organizations, and using campus resources. And these points can be cashed in for prizes. And the prizes range from everything from gift cards to Tacoma gear. So if you'd like to learn more about Dog Bones, please be in contact with Connor Leary. Connor serves as our Assistant Director of Student Involvement. And so again, open to activities, lectures, workshops, seminars. Please be in touch with Connor and he can give you the most up-to-date information and help advertise your activities and programs. Is there anything else that we can do as a campus community to support students, or what can you do on an individual level? Well, the answer is yes, there's more that you can do that we can do. And so there are three things that I'd like to offer. Faculty members, please offer students the opportunity to exchange telephone numbers. And if interested, create a chat group. Again, students are longing for ways to get in touch with each other outside of Zoom. They're online, like most of us, quite heavily these days. So the opportunity to talk in an old-fashioned environment, whoever thought a cell phone would be old-fashioned, but to be able to engage in a conversation is something that individuals have reported is a need and a want. The second thing is to communicate to students frequently and let them know that you are there and that it's okay to seek assistance and help. Tacoma, we think of ourselves as a compassionate community, and help seeking is encouraged. So it's okay, it's welcome. We invite students and others to ask for assistance, and we will respond with wraparound support. And the third thing for faculty members is to be prepared to make connections to other resources and offices. So there are a whole host of resources that are listed on the Student Affairs website, and I want to call your attention to one particular reference point. So if you were to jump onto the website, Student Affairs, and if you moved all the way over to the last button and said resources and came down, you would see this file. It's entitled the Purple folder or the Purple sheet. The Purple sheet provides step-by-step information on how to interact with a student who is in distress, the various resources available, the contact persons, as well as off-campus resources. So the Purple sheet, we believe, is an easy guide to help students who are in distress and how to make the appropriate referrals. When in doubt, contact me or Dr. Bernard, and again, we'll walk you through the various steps, okay? And the last thing I'd like to offer today is really a call to action. So testing for the coronavirus is essential for tracking its spread, and testing is available on the Tacoma campus. All members of our community who will be on campus are encouraged to enroll in the Husky Coronavirus Testing Program. It's a mouthful, and I'll say it again, the Husky Coronavirus Testing Program. These tests are administered in person, but you can also receive a test that you can take at home. Information for enrollment is posted on the UW Tacoma website. Please take a look at that information and register sooner rather than later. Testing is also available through the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department's mobile test labs. We've engaged in a wonderful partnership with them. The mobile labs have been on campus on multiple occasions, and there are 2 more test dates for the autumn quarter, October 4th and again, December 5th. So please take a look at the website, gather the information that's needed, and begin your enrollment with the Corona testing program or the mobile testing lab. And you'll see the information right now is scrolling on site. So to test or not test is personal. I understand that. And I know for some individuals, it can be a scary enterprise. So I will disclose to you that I had a test just a couple of weeks ago, and it wasn't painless at all. I sat in my car, I completed 2 forms, I lowered my mask, and I received a nasal swab. Easy peasy, no pain, no discomfort. And to my surprise, the results arrived 3 days, not weeks, 3 days later. Quite a quick turnaround time. So there's no single protection, like wearing masks, washing your hands, social distancing, or testing. It's not 100% effective. But if we stack them up together, there is evidence of significant effectiveness. So my call to action is for everyone to take action, to get tested, and help us achieve a better than normal campus, life, and culture. We want to be back on campus, gathering each other, having coffee at Metro and other spaces, and really celebrating the vitality of our campus community. And getting tested, helping us manage the virus and its spread will allow us to do so. Thank you. And now I hand it back to Joe.
All right, Mantha, thank you. I had my test as well. All I can say is no pain. It tickles. It's a deep tickle. I only have two quick things that I want to talk about, and that is when you come to campus. I just want to reiterate and remind that there's kind of some things you have to do. We're still in phase 2, so only come if necessary. The 3 W's: wear a mask, wash your hands, and watch your distance. 6 feet of distance from people. Don't spend extended periods of time with other people. Wear your mask if you're especially if you're moving through public areas of buildings. If you're sitting in an office and away from people, like I am now, you can take it off. But if you're moving through public areas or in the elevators or in restrooms, please wear your mask. And then the other thing, I know there's students tuned in, and I want to remind you that I know that these are challenging times in terms of having time to study and space to study and concentrate. We have 2 options available for you on campus for coming to campus. One is the Craigle parking lot. If you want to come be in your car to attend class or write a paper or whatever you need to do to study. But to access the Wi-Fi, we've beefed up the Wi-Fi in that lot, and you can come park there. You won't get a parking ticket. I know we've had a fair number of students accessing that, and it's been working well. The other thing is we opened up 131 study spaces on campus. You can reserve those through 25 Live. Just go to the main website, search in the search field, search for study spaces. It'll pop up. It's easy to do, to reserve your time. Set your time. You can choose which space you want. It's pretty convenient. And I know as midterms are coming up, like the week after next, more of you are going to be wanting some quiet study spaces. So that is available to you, and we encourage you to take advantage of that. So Mark, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. As promised, I told you all that today I would give you a little insight to my decision. I know it surprised a lot of folks, but first I need to tell you that Provost Richard and the president, I believe, will interface with the campus pretty quickly, pretty soon. Mantha alluded to that, to talk to you about the transition and things like that. But secondly, I got to tell you that I still have the rest of the year in front of me, in front of all of us. And I committed to the president and provost that I would work on the things that came up in the review and the things that we have in front of us. First of all, we have the COVID. We got to keep moving through this crisis and the other crisis we have in our midst. I need to help lead the campus through that budget reduction modeling. We've got to redesign the vice chancellor from our finance position if necessary, then make that higher. I'm going to continue to put a high level of priority on the climate survey implementation. Dr. James McShay and Dr. Marion Harris are doing a fantastic job with their team on the implementation plans, and we will see that through and get that started at the beginning of next year. We're actually leading the 3-campus system with our plans. I also will do as much as I can to help with the progress on diversity and equity on our campus. And as I said in the previous town hall, the climate on our campus. We need a lot of work on that, and especially with the election coming up and the aftermath of that, we probably need a lot of work to be going on in that area. So many of you may be asking, well, why now? And I know from the feedback I've been getting from the announcement that went out, and I also have talked to a lot of my other educational leaders, I surprised a lot of folks. And I think a lot of you thought I was 39, but I actually turned 65 this summer, which I know 65 is the new 39. But when Kelly and I first came here, all we could think about was 5 years ahead. It was such a big change for us. We had lived in Montana there for a while. I had a job that I loved, a place that we loved. But we were coming to something that was unknown. We absolutely fell in love with Tacoma. We didn't know much about the UW-Tacoma, or the city of Tacoma. But when we came here, we fell in love with that. We knew right away that we wanted to make this our permanent home. But because I was turning 65, I also have had 2 grandkids since I've been here. I pushed for that early review so I could get a read on the temperature of the campus, what we're all thinking about, the things we should be working on. Because I applied for a list of things that was for the first 5 years, but now we're on a next 5 years. So one of the big factors was the celebration event we had on July 30th. July 30th was the virtual celebration and the toast for the successful campaign. That night was so much fun and so meaningful to me. We had Bill Phillip, we had Jim Milgard, Rod Hangaboo, Mayor Woodards, Herb Simon and his family, Brian Ebersol, Bill Weyerhaeuser, Lyle Quazine, and many other of us supporters. These are people that I looked up to the whole time I've been here. I admire, that were instrumental in getting this campus here. And they were all in the same room, or at least on the same laptop screen at one time. They were pontificating, they were laughing, they were joking. They were so warm and appreciative of all of you, the work that you've been doing for 30 years. And they were very thankful for me for picking up the torch and carrying it for 5 years. And they were very pleased with the progress we've been making over the last 5 years, especially that campaign. I was actually floating in my chair as that celebration was going on. I was so pleased with that. And it almost felt to me like the perfect, mic drop. It's like, okay, we got that done. I'll be seeing you all later. But of course, we couldn't do that. I had seen Coach Peterson kind of do that. He took us to the Rose Bowl last year and then essentially said he was done. That wasn't really going to work with COVID going on, these budget reductions in front of us and the other pandemics. I knew I needed to keep carrying the weight of campus, but that I couldn't shake that feeling. So when we kept working on the review and responding to that and trying to figure out what was next, I could see that really I thought what would be best for the campus is to hand the baton to the next person. You might need a different skill set for the things that we have in front of us. I'm an engineer, I'm a builder, and that's what I like to do. And there may not be so much building for the next couple of years as we go through this process. But then the final kind of icing on the cake was right after commencement. We had all had a tough spring quarter. I took off for a few days and went to Montana to my grandson's house, my son and my grandson, and built a play set. We had to build it on our own because you couldn't buy one back in June. All those were gone. And I had so much fun and so much reflection and family time. We planned a canoe trip, which we went on a little later on the Missouri River. My two of my grown kids and their partners. And there on that river with just our canoes, our tents, no cell phone access, no internet access, just, a couple of coolers. We won't say what's in them, but a couple of coolers and our tents and our sleeping bags, gorgeous sky. And that warm feeling you get when you talk to your adult kids and they're finally realizing who you really are and that you're not such a bad person. I kind of melted, and I knew then with the rest of the stuff that's going on this summer, I need to start making a change. So Kelly and I, we went into high gear. I wrote a letter to the president asking to be finished with this part of my role at UW-Tacoma by the end of this academic year. Kelly applied for and got accepted into an EDD program at City College or City University of Seattle. I'm really excited about that. Now I can support her. She is teaching at Pierce and at TCC. She is a tutor, but she wants to get her EDD. So I need to support her like she has supported me. So the only kind of bump we hit was when I told the vice chancellors and the faculty leaders at a retreat at the beginning of September. It was a little bit of a surprise to all of them too. And they encouraged me to think about maybe slowing down a little bit and taking a couple of years. So they have been meeting with the president and provost. We've all been talking about that, but I think they have a good plan worked out. And you'll be hearing more about that in the coming weeks. So I felt like it was the right thing to do. I hope all of you will support me in doing this. That was the first I heard from Mentha. It sounds like she's on board, going to support us. I am really looking forward to being a faculty member, going to Metro and talking with my faculty colleagues about these harebrained ideas that Mentha and Josh and Jill are doing as the leaders of our campus. I'm trying to see her face to see if she's getting aggravated at me. But I'm looking forward to that. I will behave, but I'm really looking forward to that. And doing homework instead of analyzing budgets. But for now, for today, for you, for me, we got work to do, so we should move on. So Joe, let's go to the questions. Thank you all for listening.
Well, thank you, Mark. I have a few questions here that have been submitted. I'd like to thank everyone who submitted questions for doing so. I'll start with the Learning Commons project is bringing renovations to the Snoqualmie and Tioga library buildings, two highly used facilities during non-COVID times. The project involves 3 key student-facing units: the Center for Equity and Inclusion, the Library, and Teaching and Learning Center, who have engaged in intensive design conversations over the past 7 months. This project will soon shift to the construction phase that will likely go through October 2021. Will this project be moving forward as planned, and how might the leadership transition over the coming year affect this project?
Do you want me to answer?
Yes,
Yeah.
Mark.
Yeah, the answer to that is I don't think there will be any effect whatsoever on that. We've set aside those funds. That project is moving forward. The entire leadership team was behind that, and we'll work on it all year. When I came in as your new chancellor, a group of you had worked on the remodel of Tacoma Paper and Stationery, and no way would I change that. We went to the state and got the money for that. A lot of things when you take on a job like this are carrying forward the things that are on the baton that the person hands you before. So I am sure that that project will continue smoothly, even as I step down and you have a new leader on campus. So I wouldn't worry about that.
Thank you, Mark. The next question is for you, Mintha, and I've combined a few different questions. We've had some questions from students about tuition. So will there be any changes in tuition and fee charges since we're in a fully remote environment?
Okay. Thanks for that question, Joe. And I know this is a question that is of concern to students and comes up pretty frequently. So as the Chancellor shared with you earlier, we have a huge operating budget, and much of that comes from tuition and fees, right? That's how we pay for the operation of this enterprise. So in terms of the tuition schedule itself, it is established by the Board of Regents. And the short answer is we're not expecting any changes in tuition for the upcoming academic year. In fact, we are in the process of doing a cost analysis, and we have learned that it's actually costing a little bit more to provide virtual instruction. And so you might think it's just the opposite, but it's not. Increases are on the rise, particularly around matters related to technology. So in terms of student fees, there are lots of different buckets for student fees. And I just want to clarify that the fee structure for those is supported and voted on by the student body, and they're managed by a student committee, and they too are used to support the enterprise. So everything from student support, student activities, and the operation of university facilities. So let's look at STF, for example. STF is the student technology fee, and it's used exclusively for technology resources for general student use. So it's STF that actually allows students to print free. There were also investments in laptops for individuals that may not have had access to laptops during this unusual time. We, through STF, invested in portable hotspots, and there are a whole other set of activities that have been approved using STF funds. The why is another topic of discussion. Students often ask, why must I pay for the Y fee? Well, because students voted to support the Y, and it too, those funds contribute to the operation and maintenance of the facility and the bond or the loan that was issued to build the building. And SAFC fees provide assistance to a whole host of support services, things that you wouldn't think about, but you would be surprised to know how your generosity is helping us and helping other students. The pantry receives funding from SAFC, the Giving Garden, healthcare coverage through CHI, Global Ambassadors, the Husky Success Series, all of the RSOs and the Student Activities Board. Those are some examples of entities that are receiving assistance through SAF that benefit all students. So if you would like a full accounting of these resources, take a look at the proposals, what's been approved, what's been allocated. This information is made available publicly on the SAFC website, and I would encourage you to take a look at that and review it. Also, if you as a student have a particular interest in governance and you want to participate in the process, think about becoming a member of the SAFC committee. They engage in very rich, robust dialogue. They solicit input from students. They use all of that information to make determinations that they believe will ultimately benefit the vast majority of students in a positive way. So will tuition and fees change for the upcoming year? Not expected to occur. If there are indeed changes, we will notify you as soon as we receive notification from the border regions and colleagues in the UW Seattle system or the UW Seattle campus. Thank you.
Thank you, Mentha. So Mark, this next one's for you, and it's a little long, but I'm going to read it because I think it provides some context for the question. So SIAS makes up about half of the campus. The cost of educating students is lower in SIAS than in any other school, and as a result, SIAS generates the money needed to run most of the other schools. Yet SIAS has been languishing for years, and morale, as shown by the climate report among both faculty and staff, is disarmingly low. Repeated budget cut has stripped us of curriculum and threatens the academic integrity of what we do. It feels like our only purpose is to provide cash for everyone else. What do you see as the problems in our school? What plans do you have immediately to address these problems? And what future do you envision for us?
Well, there's about 3 questions there. I will start with the first one. I wish Jill was here. Jill is our Chief Academic Officer, but she is at a tri-campus policy meeting today, so I'll do the best I can with that. But first, SIS is kind of the heart and soul of our academic enterprise. When we started 30 years ago, essentially, those are the programs that we had. Programs are in that school, and as we expanded our disciplines over the years, we have added disciplines in other areas because it was an equity issue here in the South Puget Sound to have other kinds of degrees, business degrees, engineering degrees, social work degrees, and so forth. But that is the heart and the soul. And since I've been here for 5 years, we have not made any reductions to the School of Interdisciplinary Arts and Sciences. In fact, quite the opposite. If you look at that data that I showed earlier, that's the entire instructional enterprise, but like the questioner said, SIS is half of that. And if you look at the individual schools, we've steadily and deliberately increased SIS over the years as we built these other disciplines as well. And that's why we went to the state to ask for the money for the engineering programs. So the thing about cutting, that must have happened internally to your school, because as a campus, we have not made those reductions there. I do understand the frustration. We are going to work on some of those frustrations with our response to the report, the audit report that came out. If you've looked at that, if the questioner has looked at that, there are several recommendations that should help this process. So I will be hopeful that you will get involved in that as we move forward. I'm working closely with the Executive Council, Professor Sarah Compson and Taran Kaiglu, the Vice Chair. We are going to work in an open and transparent process this year to carefully look at the future. So thank you for asking that question.
Thank you, Mark. And I have only one last question, and it is, what is the process for deciding on the composition of the new Chancellor's Search Committee? So I'm not sure that you know, Mark, but add anything. I'll try to respond and add anything that I've missed. And I think the answer to that is that decision resides within the president's office. And so Anamare Kase, our president, will be forming a search committee and reaching out to, if I had to guess, the university on the whole, our community and our campus. But that decision resides there. And my understanding is that Anamare and Mark Richards, our provost, are coming to campus virtually in the near future to meet with faculty. And I think that would be a perfect question to ask in that meeting. So I hope that answers the question. As of right now, we don't have a sense of what that process is, but I know that they're thinking about it and moving it forward. So, Mentha.
Just wanted to add one other comment to what Joe has offered. We have heard from the president's office that there definitely is a commitment for the Tacoma campus to be involved in that process. So we understand, or I understand, that in previous situations, it has felt like decisions were made that weren't as collaborative as they could be. And so President Kase has definitely said she recognizes Mark's integral role to this campus. So much progress has been made that she wants Tacoma to continue to thrive and to be successful in the years ahead, and that it must be a collaborative effort. So as Joe mentioned, when Anamari and Provost Richards are on the campus, that's the time for faculty to engage. There will also be an opportunity for the fuller, larger, more extended community to offer feedback as well. And of course, it will be a very transparent process from beginning to end.
Great. Thank you, Mentha. And Mark, would you like to wrap things up?
Sure, I'll be happy to. I don't want to add to that, but I can remind you that Anamari was the provost and managed the process when I came, and now she's the president and will probably have a lot to do with the process. So if you look back, history is often a predictor of the future. So the same person would be managing that, and that was an extremely collaborative process. You guys moved me around for 3 days, interfacing with different constituency groups on campus. So I think, like Mentha and Joe have said, it will be very thorough and collaborative and rigorous. So that would be my comments. So my comments to close this out is, first of all, I want to thank Joe and Mentha. They did a great job in talking about the operations of campus, what we need to do to support our students and faculty as we move forward. I had an opportunity to talk to you a little bit about the budget. I'm always available to talk about that. If the faculty or staff associations, if anybody wants to hear more, I'm always eager to do that, because transparency, the more you know, the better we are and the better we can make decisions together. So I'm eager to do that. Also, I'm welcome to talk to you, any of you, about my decision. I made that clear. I'll talk to you individually if you want to, and tell you about my thought process. And I'm actually looking really forward to ending my life as a faculty member on the faculty at the University of Washington, specifically on the Tacoma campus. I love our core values here, what it means to be a faculty member and a person who works on this campus. And I can think of nothing better as to end my career in that position. So I'm looking forward to it. I want to thank the gentlemen on the technology crew that helped us today, Josh and Mark. Thank you. You always do a great job. And I want to thank all of you for asking us the hard questions today, and keep them coming. That's how we learn about what each other are doing. And go vote, please. And go Huskies. Thank you.